podcast show.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Animation Fixation Podcast, a show where we talk everything animation.
In this episode, we'll be talking about a new take on the cult classic, where everything is kooky and a little bit spooky, The Addams Family.
Released in 2019 and directed by Conrad, Vernon and Tiernan, this 3D animated depiction of the Addams Family follows the eccentric and macabre couple Morticia and Gomez Addams, who are forced from their homeland on their wedding day and forced to settle in a haunted asylum in all places, New Jersey. 13 years later, their daughter Wednesday, tired of the monotony and solitude of their lives, seeks to set her own path, befriending the daughter of a renovation reality TV show host who is about to unveil her masterpiece, a perfectly designed town full of people who all think of themselves as normal, a design to which the Addams Family most certainly does not fit into.
First appearing in 1938 as a comic in The New Yorker, this iconic and beloved American family has been through many screen iterations, including the 1964 live-action TV series, a 1973 animated series, the 1990s Barry Sonnenfeld films, and most recently, a Tim Burton Netflix spin-off series, Wednesday. With an estimated $24 million budget and a star-studded cast, including Oscar Isaac, Charlize Theron, Finn Wolfhard, and Chloe Grace Moretz, this film was undoubtedly a financial success, raking in almost $204 million globally. However, it appears to have left audiences and critics divided, scoring a total 45% on Rotten Tomatoes and 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb. Tim, I'm dying to get into this. What do you think of the look of this film?
The look? It looked like every other 3D animated film that we get these days. It did have a Hotel Transylvania look about it.
Yeah, I say that. Yeah.
But it didn't really feel like it brought anything new to the scene. Some of the designs were definitely creative. Like, I did like Wednesday's pigtails or
the
braids or
nooses.
plaits.
Yeah.
That they were designed in little nooses. I thought that was pretty creative. I did feel that there was quite a few inconsistencies actually with some of the looks. So some of the characters had quite a lot of detail in them. Like Lurch had so much detail in his jacket and his outfit and everything. Morticia looked great, but then you had other characters, mainly the regular humans. They felt very plain, but I guess since we're focusing on the Addams Family, that does make sense. But even if you move away from the design, the texturing, even some characters had a lot more texture detail in them than others, which I felt was really quite noticeable. So look wise, it was fine, but yeah, nothing special.
I know that the character designs themselves were taken nearly verbatim from the comics. So, you know, that very balloon-shaped head on Wednesday and this really kind of skinny and angular features of Morticia, these are straight out of the comics. It's very much in that style, but I absolutely felt what you were describing there with the inconsistencies in the surfacing. It just didn't, like, Morticia's hair always looks beautiful and like hair, whereas Wednesday's looks plastic throughout. And it's just quite jarring to see these characters that are supposed to be a family and existing in the same world that don't work together. In like the materials don't line up right. It was just quite odd and a little bit jarring for me.
Well, see, that's the thing. With visual effects films, you normally have quite a few film studios working on the one film. With 3D animation, you typically just have the single studio that's working on them. This film actually had 2 studios working on it. I believe it was Cinesight and Nitrogen Studios. Now, when you have 2 studios working on the same animated film, it's almost inevitable that there's going to be some level of visual inconsistencies, unless they were almost literally in the same building or sharing literally everything. But a lot of studios have their own in-house tools and programs that give off slightly different looks. So when you have these 2 studios trying to work together, it's almost impossible to have everything looking exactly the same. It's just not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but I do feel like it would have benefited from kind of an extra pass, putting everything next to each other and spending the time there. I think it would have made them feel a
True,
little more consistent.
true. I mean, the thing is, like, we've spoken about this before. It doesn't matter how good a film looks. You could have everything looking very consistent, very beautiful, tons of detail in everything. But if the story and the characters are not
Yeah.
interesting, everything else is completely irrelevant. And the story, everything, it's boring. It's so dull. I completely forgot what the film is. Like, yeah, obviously it's about the Addams family, but it's like, okay, what's the plot of the film? The Addams family being Adamses? Yeah, I don't remember anything. Just that, there was some of the jokes at this beginning I found were funny. Like
Yes.
the scene where Lurch wakes up and he's in the padded room, like a makeshift padded room, and he puts his book back and makes sure that his books are all very aligned and very perfect. And it actually was a callback to a scene from Criminal Minds where they're chasing after this person that had lived in an insane asylum that did those exact same behaviors with those books. And I'm thinking, oh, that's clever. And then the next thing we know, we have a Thing who's looking up some foot fetish material, which would have gone straight over the kids' heads. But I love that kind of humor. But there was nothing else after that. I wanted to see more of that, but everything else just fell flat and just wasn't interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the jokes were definitely, as you said, there were some really good moments with Thing and with Lurch. I like that they made more of a character of the house itself, like having that spirit of the house. I found actually quite interesting.
True.
And I loved that gag at the beginning with the house screaming, "Get out," and Morticia just like pouring coffee down the toilet for it, and then the house comes out. I felt that on a spiritual level. That was a good one. I feel like a lot of the jokes of this aren't going to age very well, but yeah, there are a few little gems in there. I think probably where it falls the flattest for me is Fester.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly why. But it feels like punch down comedy. It feels like we're supposed to be laughing at him for being stupid and not laughing with him because he's saying or doing something funny. And so it doesn't feel nice at all. Like I felt quite
No,
uncomfortable
it feels
with
very
this whole character.
forced.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with you. He was annoying, especially when we saw his salami nipples. That was disturbing.
I've been blocking those from my memory. Thanks for bringing back that visual.
You are most welcome. But yeah, look, I have to completely agree. He wasn't funny. He was very forced. Another character that was disappointing was Gomez. I'm a big fan of the 90s movies, the Addams Family and the Addams Family Values, yes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're the exact same movies, and they might not age the best, but they are a classic,
they're well-meaning
staple. Yeah, and Christopher Lloyd, who played Fester in those films, did an excellent job. And then you have this
absolutely
Bozo the Clown come in that was not funny in any way. Okay, he was a little bit kooky, but and then you have Gomez, who I felt was disappointing because Gomez has always been that charming, suave, also kooky, but as someone that was likable. Like, it's not like he was dislikable in this, but he just didn't have that charm that all the previous Gomez's had.
You were definitely missing that chemistry between Gomez and Morticia. I mean, I think the Addams Family, because it now has been through so many iterations, through so many different actors and so many different characters on screen, it almost has become a little bit like that, you know, if you're a Star Trek fan, who is your captain? Is it Kirk or is it Picard? You know, if you're a Doctor Who fan, are you is Tennant your Doctor? Is Capaldi? Is it Matt Smith? Like, these are the kind of things, I think once you kind of have a version of the Addams Family in your head, that kind of sets the benchmark for things for you. And I'm absolutely with you. Those 90s films were my teenage years, and I loved them so much. I loved the characters in them. The whole reason that these characters were written the way that they were is they were supposed to be the antithesis of everything else that you were seeing in American media at the time. So instead of having, you know, the nagging wife and the long-suffering husband, you had this couple that were just so deeply in love with each other and so intimately connected, with sexual tension you could cut with it was just beautiful. Like, I'm sorry, I have grown up with this, and Gomez and Morticia are absolutely relationship goals.
Absolutely.
Like, that is just this beautiful, beautiful connection that they have, and you don't feel it in this. It absolutely feels like a betrayal of that love story to see the way they interact with each other here, because Gomez reaching out to get help for Morticia to do something in this film is taken as a slight, whereas you absolutely feel like if we were looking at Angelica Houston's Morticia, that she would absolutely see the spirit in which this was meant, and it was just, you know, I'm worried about you and I'm trying to help you because I love you.
Yes.
And it wouldn't have, the scene would not have played out the same way. It felt like it was forcing this really unnecessary family tension just to force the plot along.
I think forced is a great word to use. With Morticia and Gomez, the whole antithesis of their relationship is their obsession with each other. Neither one of them could do any wrong against the other. They just see the positives in everything that each other did. You know, but there was none of that in this, which, you know, the only positive when it came to relationships with this film was that they did keep the basic idea of the Addams Family, and that is the love for family, the importance of family. I do feel that did come through. We just didn't get complexities in their relationship. We didn't get any of what we're used to when seeing the Addams Family in this. Like, I guess that the directors are trying to create their own version, but I feel like they strayed too far from what the Addams Family is supposed to be.
One thing I think that really stuck with me from the 1990s films is this absolute sense of honesty that Gomez and Morticia have with their kids. Like, they won't sugarcoat things, they won't lie to them, and they'll tell them the truth of the situation. And like the great example of that is in the Addams Family Values, when they're in the hospital waiting for Pubert to be born, and the other little girls there talking about, Mummy kissed Daddy, and then the angel told the story, and this whole big elaborate lie about how babies are born. That our parents having a baby too. They had sex. Like, it's just that really cut and dry. There is no lies about this. It's like, this is how the world works. We're not going to lie to you. The fact that Gomez and Morticia were, it was more of a lie by omission, because they knew that there was a world out there. They knew that there were these things out there, but they were lying to protect the kids from it. While well-meaning, I think does kind of undercut that spirit of that kind of unsugar-coated honesty, and that treating the kids with agency as adults. I think that kind of undercut that a little bit, and I was a little bit disappointed to see that particular characterization included. I think that was probably the one that hurt me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think of the other characters, like the quote-unquote normal characters?
I didn't mind them too much. I mean, Margaux was interesting. I don't like the way they resolved her arc, because it doesn't quite make sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense that she'd be so gung-ho with, I'm going to destroy this family, I'm going to tear down their house, to then being business partners and in a relationship with Fester. Like there's
Yeah.
something massive missing there. Like there was not enough character growth from
No.
her to get to that point where the ending makes sense. And I
Yep.
know that it was supposed to be harking back to, you know, Debbie from the Addams Family Values, and
Yep.
even further back to the 1960s TV series, where it
Yep.
kind of became a running gag that Fester would fall in love with the woman of the week kind of thing. But
Yep.
it just didn't quite work here. Like I feel like we need a whole other movie to explain how we got from point A to point B.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
were they even in a relationship at the end, or were they business partners?
That's the
I
question.
I
'Cause I
don't know.
mean,
Like,
there's
when you said the relationship at the end, I'm like, what relation? Oh yeah, they were doing this thing with the houses at the end. I mean, that just goes to show how forgettable this film is.
I think the only reason I question is that the relationship thing is because of the way that Fester's talking about her throughout the film. Like, you know, he's obviously smitten with her, and yeah, then at the end, just some of the language that they're using is more of a romantic partner than a business partner. But whether
Hmm.
that's something that's just in Fester's head, I don't know. It's really unclear. But even just being business partners, even if we say, okay, fine, it's not romantic or anything like that, even to get into the point where they're just business partners, it's just like, oh, my evil plan failed. Cool, I guess I'll be the good guy then. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that
but
that doesn't.
I mean,
No.
it's also very strange because like the whole town realizes that she's been spying on all of them. Okay,
And there's
but
no consequences.
there's no consequences, and she gets back into doing the same thing, and it appears to just be accepted, just that she's now selling houses to the Addams relations. It's very weird. Like it makes no sense. I don't know.
And Parker just disappears. Like we never get any conclusion to what's
Oh,
going
yeah.
on with her.
Didn't she become
The
emo?
whole B plot's not. I mean, like at the very least, goth. I'm sure someone's gonna be offended that I'm like emo goth. I can't tell the difference, but I can't. I think the difference is whether you were that kind of style in the 90s or the 2000s. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't think we ever see what happens after that, because obviously it's a rebellion thing against, you know, her mother's everything's got to be perfect and pristine and exactly the way I want it. It was a rebellion against that. And when Margaux kind of changes tacks, even though it doesn't quite make sense, you don't ever see anything about Parker. And I know it's just the wrap up at the end, but just it feels wrong to leave that little storyline unresolved.
Yep.
There is one other major plot hole that absolutely bothered me for the whole film, and that was the whole storyline around the Mazurka, because it says quite clearly at the start of the film that the events are taking place 13 years after Gomez and Morticia get married and move into the asylum.
Yep.
And then Gomez says to Pugsley, this is going to be the first time the family's been together in 13 years. So Pugsley's the first one getting a Mazurka, but he's the second kid, and we very clearly see that there are other women in the Addams family that go through this process. So
Yep.
Wednesday just didn't get one. She's been excluded, but then they show her with like a portrait with the hat that seems to suggest she's done it.
Yep.
But like, have you got a date wrong? Did she not do this? I'm trying to work out what's going on there, because it feels weird that she's either been excluded from this family tradition, or they've just, to make the stakes of it feel more intense on Pugsley, they've misquoted it.
They barely went into any detail on it. It's like, what is it exactly? Is it a sword dance? Is it a sword fight? Like, what exactly is it? And even
Yes.
then they
Yes,
kind
yes.
of just danced around the whole thing. It was just another needless plot device. You know, it just added to the mess that is this film, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of the Addams Family? Yeah, it's one of those films.
Look, there's one thing that I did really like about this film, so I'm going to give it its honourable mention.
Okay.
And that is the lighting on Morticia, because they've just perfectly done this chiaroscuro right across her eyes, and it just immediately sings out to you of that, film noir, femme fatale.
Yep.
You cannot help but see her as this gorgeous, stunning and dangerous woman the second you see that lighting. So that lighting effect created throughout was stunning. My hats are off to the lighters.
Well, she was easily the most interesting character, to be honest.
Yes.
I also really liked her design. I will say, though, it was a little bit jarring, the fact that she floated everywhere and like you never saw her legs actually move. She just kind of floated around, and I kind of get what they were going for, but I still kind of found it a little bit jarring.
I've only just thought of that, but yeah, you're right.
But again, she was the most interesting character out of all of them. Wednesday is a close second, but as for the rest of them, pretty forgettable. Didn't really do the Addams Family beforehand justice. The voice acting, though, was good. I couldn't even recognize Snoop Dogg as Cousin It.
I think I only called it from the musical cues that they were kind of putting, like as Cousin It was driving in the car, they had some music playing that I think was either like a remix of a Snoop Dogg song, or it was in the style.
Okay.
It was...
I mean, it didn't really make much sense to have Snoop Dogg as Cousin It, but, it was fine. All the other voice acting was very good, though. I will give them that.
Very good.
What did you think of the music?
I think that song at the beginning, the Christina Aguilera song, when Morticia is getting ready for her wedding, that was a really good choice. It worked really well with this whole setup for Morticia as this kind of femme fatale, this dangerous, beautiful woman. Like, it just worked really well at the time. The way that they tried to diegetically incorporate Lurch learning to play the Addams Family theme was way too forced, and I hate that scene exists. And other than that, I cannot even remember there being music in this film.
Even the music was forgettable. The only one that I remember is the very forced opening of da-na-na-na, like, and it went on for way too long as well. With the thing trying to get Lurch to do the right tune is
yes,
we see where you're going with this. Can you just hurry it up? And that just took too long.
I would like to point out that Thing is a hand and could play at least part of that song themselves. So
yes,
could have saved us so much of that scene and so much screen time. And if you just jumped in and if you wanted that to happen, make it happen. Take some agency, Thing, but no.
Yes.
No.
Oh, what did you think of Thing wearing? Was he wearing a heart monitor or a smartwatch?
It's a smartwatch, and it's got a little like blinking eye on it. I think it was an interesting choice having Thing wearing the watch, because I get that it can be hard to find a dismembered hand essentially cute, and that definitely worked to make Thing a little bit cuter for probably an audience that wasn't used to seeing the little hand wandering around. But also...
nothing about the Addams Family should be cute, though.
No, it doesn't feel like the right choice. I didn't feel like we needed to add any personality. I think it was trying to add personality to Thing, and I don't think it needed to, because, I mean, you look at, again, I'm going to keep coming back to the 1990s films. Thing didn't have a face. Thing didn't have any kind of, fancy watch showing off how he's feeling. It was all in performance, and the performance was incredible. And I feel like it was a lazy way to get rid of having to do that performance. And given that the rest of the performances in this film were so strong from the characters, I hate the script. The performances from the voice actors were incredible. So I think when you have these really strong performances that you're up against as well, having to compensate for Thing, you really feel it, you really notice it.
I think too, it's one of those things that you see with a lot of modern films where they try to force in modern day references, both with social media and technology, and having, Thing have a smartwatch on him. I hate it when they force those things because suddenly it's no longer going to be timeless. The original
Yeah.
thing from, the TV show, the 90s movies, it's going to be timeless because it's got no reference to technology. It never needed that. But now when you're forcing that stuff in, it's suddenly, in 20 years when if someone wants to watch this movie again, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's something that they did 2 decades ago. Whereas if they watched, Thing from the 90s movie, it's something that they can still, relate to.
Yeah.
I just can't stand it when filmmakers try and force these modern day references to be cool and hip and to try and build that relationship with the younger audiences. But I kind of feel that it talks down to them a little bit. It's like, you won't get any of these, regular references. You'll only understand Facebook, smartphones, those sorts of things. And it's a little bit insulting to the young kids' intelligence.
I think there's a really weird mishmash of ideas in this film because, as you're saying, absolutely, there is this whole part of it that is geared towards, just hooking the younger generation and going, oh, well, you're only interested in this. But then there are all of these links back to things from the 60s and earlier that are such a specific link that, like, obviously this is made by mega fans of the Addams Family. So you have all these really old-fashioned references next to these things that are just thrown in to try and be a plot hook. So, for example, like the ending where they're all sitting around Morticia's chair, that's directly out of the 60s TV series. The character designs are all out of the comics, where they paint the house pink at the end when they're rebuilding the house. This is actually a reference to the original set for the 60s Addams Family because to get the right shade of grey on TV, the set was actually painted pink. So there's a lot of these really... Yes, there's a lot of these really weird niche little references going on throughout it. And so you can tell... You can tell that it's a passion project. I think it has almost the opposite problem from Bakshi's Lord of the Rings that we were last talking about, where it's a passion project in this other way. So Bakshi was trying to tackle so much in so little time, whereas this is just trying to cram as many references in without worrying too much about the actual steps along in the story. So it's more worried about getting those character moments in and those individual sit with this character, sit here, get this little reference in, whereas Bakshi's was forcing its way through all these different events. This doesn't care about the events, it cares about the characters and just flaunting this nerd knowledge, and neither of them are effective, I think, but it's just an interesting juxtaposition.
I love those sorts of things, those sorts of details that go into films that maybe not everyone's going to understand or know about, but it shows the loyalty to the original source. So even though I'm not really a big fan of this film, knowing that actually gave it a few brownie points, because that is actually really cool.
Yeah, there's some great little references throughout.
Oh, absolutely. But I don't feel it's enough to save the film.
No.
But coming to the end, what are your final thoughts on the 2019 3D animated version of The Addams Family?
I think it was only okay. Like, it wasn't anything to write home about. It has some good moments, but it's outweighed by really writing that I cannot excuse in a lot of cases. And it's unfortunate that it falls flat because I really wanted this to be a good film. So I'd say 3 out of 5. And that's being generous, I think.
Yeah, look, this is a film that it feels like it was made for kids, because I can't see many adults really getting into this, but unfortunately I can't even see kids really getting into it. It's quite dull. It's forgettable. It's unfortunate because some of the visuals are quite good. Some of the character designs, not all of them, but some of them are definitely very good. But the visuals are not enough to save this film. It's not one that I'll go ahead and watch again. I wouldn't say that it was a terrible film. If you were to compare it to a film like Hotel Transylvania wins on all fronts. But again, I don't hate it. I just wouldn't watch it again. 3 out of 5 definitely is being generous, this one.
I've got to be nice occasionally, Tim.
I got to give this a 2 out of 5. Well, that's everything
that's
from
valid.
us. Yes, and I think that we should really leave it there. So thank you everyone for listening in to this episode of the Animation Fixation Podcast Show, and stick around for the next episode. Catch you later.
Bye.